Going to talk about some crime trends that have been occurring in Decatur over the summer. Luckily for this group of residents, these crimes have not actually been occurring in your neighborhoods, so that's a very good thing. But we do know that Decatur being 4.2 square miles, if crime is happening anywhere in Decatur, it's not too far from your neighborhood. But y'all probably have seen, if you're on social media or even concerning some of these crimes, if you watch the evening news on any of the local channels, you've probably seen some pretty disturbing things back in the earlier part of the summer. So I'm going to go just a real brief summary of what we've been having. Starting in early June, running through the early part of July, middle part of July, over about a 6 weeks period, we were having a series of residential burglaries down in the Winona Park, South Candler Road area. We had roughly 12 to 15 residential burglaries that we were able to determine were probably committed by the same group of people. Based on what we were seeing in these crimes, these burglaries, we realized they probably weren't being committed by a single person. It was going to take a group of people to do what they did in such a short amount of time. And working with DeKalb County Police and with City of Atlanta Police, we've determined and have some intelligence that these burglaries, which were also being committed all over South DeKalb and City of Atlanta, were probably being committed by a group of teenagers. And they had a lot of similarities. They were stealing cars, committing the burglaries, dumping the cars, stealing more cars. They were taking large items that required a vehicle to be used to transport the stolen goods away from the scene. DeKalb County, and all of these juveniles that are suspects in these cases were residents of South DeKalb County. They were none of them residents here in the city of Decatur, which made it very difficult for us, because as soon as they would commit the crime, they were right back outside the city and gone. DeKalb County has made some arrests on those, and we are comparing physical evidence with the suspects they've caught with our crimes to see if we can match up any of our burglaries to them. But they kind of died out for a while. And I'll get back later to we think they are active again. About the same time while those burglaries were going on, we had several more burglaries in the same area, South DeKalb, South Candler, Winona Park area, that were not similar to these. And we were able to identify a suspect in those burglaries, and he was arrested in early June and has been charged with several crimes based upon fingerprint evidence that we collected. That's one great tool we have in the city of Decatur. When I started in police work, you would watch a TV drama on TV, and as soon as they got a fingerprint, they were able to automatically determine who that person was. Well, those of us in law enforcement knew that was fiction. The only way a fingerprint was going to help you is if you knew who a suspect was, and then you could compare their fingerprints to the one you've got here. But it was no magic bullet, no silver bullet to get. Nowadays, I've lived long enough, been in the job long enough that some of that science fiction has now come true. Because now fingerprints can be automated and stored in a database, computer database, and then if you retrieve a print from a crime scene, you can enter that into a computer, and it's much more difficult than just sticking it in, scanning it in. It's a process to do it. But you can put it in and then run it against criminal justice databases, and sometimes you can get a hit and they'll tell you who the person is. You still have to have an expert there to verify what the computer gives you, but it is a great tool. And about 2 years ago, we were able to purchase the system, the automated fingerprint identification system, and at the same time, one of the county's fingerprint examiners who knew how to work the system retired from the county, and we were granted permission to hire her on a part-time basis to run just our fingerprints for us. And she is the person that was able to put evidence collected at the scenes of these burglaries into the computer and identify our suspect for us. So it's really been a great addition to the department and to the city. Again, I said these were several burglaries down that same location, but we pretty much knew it was being done by a different person based upon the MO, the way they were committed. Even more disturbing, during that same time period, starting in the early part of July, we had several armed robberies down in the southwest zone of the city. You probably saw these on the TV. The gentleman who was sitting out in front of his house one night, and two suspects came up to him, tried to take his laptop. He fought them. One of them fired a shot into the air. They left, and then we had another robbery in Oakhurst Park just a couple of days later. We worked very closely with Atlanta PD on this because they were having similar crimes being committed in Zone 6 Atlanta, which is the part of Atlanta that is adjacent to the city of Decatur. They had a very good idea which group was committing these armed robberies because whereas we had one or two, they were having multiples. And again, the scary part is it was a group of juveniles, young 14, 15-year-olds, and they were armed and they were firing weapons. They never actually hurt anybody in any of our robberies, but when you have someone that young with a firearm doing these types of things, it just really, is a very volatile situation. Atlanta has made some arrests of some of these people. We, at the time, correct me if I'm wrong, at this time we haven't been able to make a case on either of our two, but we're still working trying to build those cases. During the same time, or roughly the same time, we had a carjacking on Swanton Way, where a juvenile with a firearm carjacked a lady about 7:30, 8 o'clock one morning up on Swanton Way, right in downtown Decatur. We had two very alert county employees that saw it and called the police, and then got in their county truck and just followed the suspect, stayed on the phone with the police, telling us they've turned here, they've turned here. We caught that suspect, and he is in custody. Hitting closer to home here, we had a carjacking reported on Sycamore Drive right up here at Grove Street. Best, from what the victim told us, he first noticed the car that he says the people that carjacked him were in, followed him from the Toco Hill area all the way into here. He doesn't know exactly when they got behind him, but he first noticed a car looking like that in Toco Hills, and it just so happened when he stopped up here for the stop sign, they pulled up around him. Had nothing, he did not live in this neighborhood. Nothing from the investigation ties it to this neighborhood. It just happened to be where it occurred.
Couldn't have done it in the county.
No, they couldn't have stopped somewhere before they got into the city, but
It had to be between Decatur Medical and
we had, and at this time, let me explain a couple of things. A robbery can be a wide expanse of actions. If I walk up to you and snatch your purse, that's a robbery. If I come up and stick a gun in your face, that's an armed robbery, okay? If I knock you down and beat on you till I can take your purse away from you, that's still a robbery, all right? Robbery is taking something from the person of another, all right? So there are different degrees of how serious a robbery is. If you're sitting on the square and you lay your phone down at a restaurant table while you're eating and somebody just runs by and grabs the phone off the table, that's a robbery, all right? So there are different degrees of seriousness in what we call robberies. We had a robbery on New Street, and basically these two young men came into a little gym where there was a young lady working, and from what she told us, their activity, they tried everything in the world to distract her away from the area of the business where her purse and the computer and everything else were. When that didn't work, they just resorted to pushing her out of the way, grabbing the computer, and taking off. She was a very, very alert and perceptive young lady, and she gave us vehicle description. I think she gave us tag number. We were able to discover that this car was stolen from a business in Toco Hills, Northwood Hills, the day before, and it was a distraction robbery where they distracted the clerk at that business till they could steal the keys to the car and then steal the car. Those up in DeKalb County were thefts. Ours became a robbery because our victim wouldn't be distracted, so they had to resort to more force. That does not appear to be related to our robberies that had occurred earlier in the month. And then we had just recently, we had a robbery of two pedestrians on Fayetteville Road, which are very similar to the earlier robberies in July. Again, we think those are going to be juveniles in this one group of juveniles out of Atlanta. Again, that was our mini crime wave at the beginning of the summer that kept us up nights and really wore on us trying to deal with these. It's been quiet for several weeks. almost a month. It's been pretty quiet. None of these. It looked like they had died out. But then this weekend, we had a burglary on Superior Avenue, and a second house was an attempted burglary. And it looked very similar to what we had been seeing down on the south side of town earlier in the summer. The MO was just very similar. And then on Monday night, we had a burglary on Oldfield Drive back down on the south side, and talking with the county, they got hit very hard all around South DeKalb, around the southern edge of Decatur. So it looks like these juveniles may have gotten back active. We still have a very strong and very active consultation, coordination with DeKalb County and Atlanta on these things, because criminals don't recognize boundaries. They don't know where the city limits are. They don't know where the county limits are. So we in law enforcement have to work together more closely than we ever have before. And I will tell you that in the investigations of these robberies, I've seen a closer working relationship between the three law enforcement agencies, Atlanta, DeKalb, and Decatur, greater than anything I've ever seen since I've been here. And in 3 weeks, I will have been here 24 years. So that's saying something. The cooperation got so good that we actually divvied up our evidence investigation to where Atlanta on those robberies, they'd actually had some shootings where they recovered a lot of firearms evidence, and they have a testing lab within APD to test their ballistics evidence. We don't. We send everything to the GBI. And we only had a couple of shell casings, was all the ballistics evidence we had. Okay, one shell casing was on. So we told them, well, since y'all are doing the ballistics on it, why don't you take ours and just keep it all together? And they're like, okay. And they're like, how quick can y'all get fingerprints run? We're like, very good. We have it on staff. And they're like, well, we have people on staff too, but we have so much, it's still a backlog. They say, can we just give you all our fingerprint evidence for y'all to process? We're like, sure. So anytime you can get a law enforcement agency to give up some of their evidence, that is really saying something. But again, like I said, it's been the best cooperation I have seen in a very long time. That is the general picture of where crime is in Decatur over the last 3 months. It has been an uptick. It is not a unheard of, never before experienced uptick. Crime goes in waves and patterns. It wasn't enough, like I said, to cause us to put extra patrols, overtime shifts on the road, to put officers out in plain clothes and plain cars. I will tell you that this neighborhood is really impressive. I'm very pleased with you. About a year ago, we were having some burglaries and entering autos in this neighborhood, where the burglaries were where they were taking the electrical meters off so to disable the alarms, and then going in, and it appeared like they were waiting for people to leave in the mornings and then hitting the houses right after they left for work. And we had told everybody, if you see something suspicious, call us. Don't think about it. Don't think, should I call, should I not call? If the question is in your mind, should I call? Call us. Let us come check things out. Well, I know that was taken to heart, because we put an overtime detail in place where we were putting plainclothes officers out here in a plain vehicle. And I cannot count the number of calls I received during that time period of people calling in to report a suspicious person, and it turned out to be our officer. And I would tell everybody the same thing. I'd call them back. I was like, thank you for reporting this. Just between me and you, don't tell your neighbors, don't tell anybody else, don't put it on social media, but that is a Decatur police officer in an unmarked car. Well, sure enough, it wouldn't be 30 minutes, and I'd get another call, and I'd tell them the same thing. So I'm hoping that, and I believe that nobody was spreading the news, because then if they had, people would have stopped calling me. But every day we ran that operation, I would get no less than a half a dozen calls reporting a suspicious vehicle, and it was our officer. So we do still do those kind of things. And so if you see a car you don't recognize, if we start having problems in this neighborhood, call it in. And if it's our officer, I'll let you know. I'll swear you to secrecy. It'll be just between me and you, just don't tell any of these other people. But